Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm Paige. I'm an alcoholic. And yeah, where we're going to be picking up is Peppa was kind enough to remember for us. It's always helpful when I don't have to, is we're picking up on page 12. And where we're at is the first full paragraph. But let's give us a little bit of context, because we're going to be diving into, despite the living example of my friend, there remained in me the vestiges of my old prejudice. And we see vestiges and we're like, oh, is that the word of the day? It is not, because it's in the book. But so what are we talking about here? So Bill Wilson has been drinking. Rob's got the definition already in the chat. Amazing. But Bill Wilson, he's drinking, and he's come to the end of himself. He's had his step one experience on page 8. He knows that there is not a solution. There is not hope for him. He knows that there's nothing that he can do to stop himself from drinking. And who shows up at his door is his old drinking buddy, Ebby Thatcher. And Ebby Thatcher is bringing him knowledge of what the solution is and what the program of action is. So the solution for each and every one of us is a spiritual awakening, a spiritual experience. And the program of action that we have to get there today is the 12 steps. And right now the story is told that they were at Bill Wilson's kitchen table, and the truth is they weren't. They were upstairs, and Lois was there, and they even had a housekeeper there. But again, if you're hearing this and you're like, oh, wait a minute, Paige, you've ruined my day. Probably not the first time I've done that, especially for those of you that keep coming. So glad you do. I love you. But if you're like, what do you mean it didn't happen at a kitchen table? What I want to remind each and every one of us is the history of Alcoholics Anonymous is a parable. It is a story that is meant to convey a meaning. And the meaning of the kitchen table is that one alcoholic can help another alcoholic. It gets a little muddled when it's like, you want my wife to be here? That's usually not the best case. So, although, welcome all the wives. Kathy, glad you're here. It's her favorite thing when I call her out. She just loves it. All right. All right. So Bill Wilson is presented with the solution which is spiritual in nature. And over the last 2 pages, what we saw Bill Wilson do is wrestle with this idea of God. He wrestled with the idea of the second step. And we saw where Bill Wilson was open and Bill Wilson was closed, where he would open himself up to a power greater than himself, and where he would lock down and get closed. And where we're diving in is Bill Wilson sees his old drinking buddy, Ebby Thatcher. He sees him carry himself in this waggish, this ebullient, this joyful, free, happy way. Like he sees the change and he's like, there's something here. And that's what opens him up. That change that we see in the lives in the lives of others. That's what we see. That's what opens him up. And that's often what opens us up. We come to the rooms and we see people that drank the way that we drank, that felt the way that we felt, that went through what we went through, and look at them, man, they're not like me. They're happy and they're sober and the light's on in their eyes, and that's what he's seeing in his friend Ebby Thatcher. And so where we're diving in, it says despite. So despite the living example of my friend, and that's what I believe I'm called to be. I'm not going to say you're called to be, but I'm called to be an example. It says he did no ranting. I know, I got a little enthusiastic. But that idea that he was a living example of this program. This program didn't exist yet. But he was a living example of the power of the spiritual awakening, the power of the spiritual experience. And I believe that I am called not to tell you, but to show you the change that has happened to me. To be a demonstration of this power, to be a light that shines in the darkness for those who need this way of life, who need to find a way out. That's what I feel I'm called to do. And I can't do it if I'm Well, I'm Eeyore. I've lost my drinking. I'm happy to be not my tail. I'm happy to be sober. I'll take 24 and pass it on. Like, again, like to bring that joy and enthusiasm, not to lie, by the way, not to put on airs, not to put on a mask, but that truly joyful, ebullient state of freedom and peace. That's what we're trying to demonstrate. And so again, when I am faced with having to do steps that I don't want to take, I'm not just taking them for me. I'm not just writing inventory for me. I'm not just making amends for me. I'm not just praying for me. I'm not just meditating for me. I'm doing it for those who do not know that there is a way out. So despite the living example of my friend, there remained in me the vestiges of my old prejudice. And Rob put that definition in the chat. So he's holding on. Those old prejudices are sticking there. They are not letting go. And the prejudice, to have prejudice, is to have an old idea about an experience I've not had. So he's got these ideas that there's no power. I don't like a personal God. This power couldn't help me. Where has this power worked in my life? And those are his old ideas. So he's still got some of those. When the thought was expressed that there might be a God personal to me, this feeling was intensified. So that idea of like a personified God, or a God that would work intimately in his life, he's like, no, I'm not open to that. I didn't like the idea. Oh, and yes, sorry, I forgot antipathy. Antipathy is that, like, as Rob put, strong dislike, aversion. And so it's that feeling that, like, the word God still aroused a certain antipathy, that dislike, that aversion. So, when you go to a meeting and you see somebody like me that's using the word God all over the place, God, 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 and joy, 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 and just let's do the steps, woohoo, I was at a meeting that I go to last night, and I have the announcements, and I announce, one of the things that I announce is the big book studies, and there's a gentleman there that was like, we know, Paige, we know your announcement, woo, big book studies, and I'm like, yeah, woo, big book studies, that's my announcement, like that. So when we see somebody like me, and then we are like, ugh, like we hear the God word and we're like, ugh, that's that antipathy. And it says, when there's expressed that there might be a God personal to me, that ugh was increased. It's like, oh, I'm so not open for that. I didn't like the idea. But this is again what he's open to. I could go for such conceptions as capital C, capital I, creative intelligence, capital U, capital M, universal mind, or capital S, capital N, spirit of nature. So he's open to this sort of universal conception of a power. That's where he's open. And I point out the capitalizations because when we see capitalizations, those are words that we can use instead of God. But those are also words that are pointing to the power of God. See, the word is just a title. God is just a title. God is just a label. What we are after is the power and the presence that is beyond the title. That's what I'm after. And if you're like, what do you mean? Like God's a title? Well, I don't know about you. I know I put that title of God on many things in my life. Like alcohol. That was a God in my life. Him, he was a God in my life. Now listen, I'll be frank. He should not have been a God in my life. I could not have chosen a worse higher power than him. And then, the wildest thing, you know what? He stopped being a good God very quickly. It's wild. You meet them under a bridge and they don't turn out how you think they should. And so I had to get in the God position to try to fix him. I'm in for a real fixer-upper. That's how I show up to relationships. Well, do I know I'm the fixer-upper? Anywho, so him, the job, the career, the education, the status, the power, the prestige, the money, I've made all of those things a God in my life. But they are ineffective gods. And so it's just a title. And again, what am I after? I'm after what is beyond the title. So it doesn't matter what we call it. And he says, but I resisted the thought of a czar of the heavens. Capital C, capital H, and czar just means king. So this king, this ruler of the heavens, sort of that, the bearded guy in the sky, the Santa Claus, again, that's where he's closed. However loving his sway might be, I have since talked with scores of men who felt the same way. And keep in mind, Bill Wilson, he is drunk on his butt on gin. And like, he's, showing up, and he's doing like, our boy, Ebby Thatcher, is doing his best to carry this message and to just share what's happened with him. And Bill's like, you're all cockwomble, which is an antiquated term for somebody that's, full of nonsense. He's all, you don't know. And then, so you can almost imagine that out of like desperation, and we all know what it's like to be the drunk on the phone taking hostages. But when you've been taken hostage by a drunk and you can't talk no sense into them, that's the visual I have with Bill Wilson, where he's like, no, and then it says, my friend suggested, and you can almost imagine with sheer exasperation, what then seemed a novel idea. Why don't you choose your own conception of God? Almost like, fine, Bill, choose your own conception of God. Now, I'm telling that story in that way because it's funny. But as Rob will know, and he was probably getting nervous as I was telling that story, as Rob will know, that's not what happened. That didn't happen in real life. This part was added largely by the influence of my homie, Paige. They're not all your homies. Yes, they are. I make friends with these long dead co-founders. Hank Parkhurst. And Hank Parkhurst suggested that this was added right before the book went out to be published. And again, you might be like, what? Ebby Thatcher didn't really tell Bill this? No. And who cares? And you might be like, girl, why are you ruining my day? I don't know. I'm just like this. But again, it is a parable to convey the meaning. This was added because it was so important for us to make it very, very clear that we get to choose our own conception of God. We get to choose our starting blocks. We get to choose where we start with step 2. We have that freedom. So that was added likely to emphasize the point. And if Bill wasn't as closed as he, or if Bill was, or wasn't told this, like that is okay. All right. So it says that statement hit me hard. It melted the icy intellectual mountain in whose shadow I had lived and shivered many years. I stood in the sunlight at last. That moment where something just cracks open for you and you're willing to just try another way. That's what would have happened to Bill. And that's what we're describing. And keep in mind, when he's describing that icy intellectual mountain, what he's saying is his thoughts and his beliefs and his ideas. That was what was keeping him in the darkness. That's what was keeping him stuck. And here's my experience. In Alcoholics Anonymous, time after time, I am held back by my thoughts and my beliefs and my ideas. But if I take action, that will always overcome it. Always overcome it. Action is what I need to do. Action is what I need to take. And I'm sure we've all heard that saying, there's nobody too dumb in AA, but there are people that are too smart. And I want you to know that that's not true. There aren't people who are too smart to get well in AA. There are people who think they are too smart to get well in AA, which is not better. That's actually worse. It's that idea that I think I need to figure it out. I think my intellect can keep me sober. I want to intellectualize it. And again, Alcoholics Anonymous is not an intellectual exercise. I can remember these facts and I can recite parts of the book from memory, but that's not because I studied it in that traditional way. It's just because I've taken so many drunks through it. My intellect has absolutely no power to keep me sober. Nothing less than a spiritual experience. An experience is what I need. And I can't think my way into an experience. And if you're like me, you know what it's like to start thinking, and I am wrapped up in the vortex of my repetitive, unhelpful, depressive, self-deprecating thoughts. I can't think myself there, but I can take the actions as outlined in this book, and that will allow me to awaken, to have the experience. So, I am held in the darkness by my beliefs and my ideas. And I love that it talks about I stood in the sunlight at last. Because light is such a beautiful metaphor for this power. And I love the idea of light as God, because light is not simply what I see. Of course I see light, but light is also the way in which I see. And some of y'all know I'm a real bird person because I'm fun at parties. Woo! Let me hang out with you at a fun social gathering, and let's read the original manuscript. And let me tell you about the northern flicker. Let me tell you about that bird. But a lot of times I've shared about the magpie. And I've shared about, and I don't know if this is going to work. This is the best magpie feather that I've got. And so I'm going to see if this will work. I might have to turn on the overhead light. And some of you guys know what a sacrifice that is. Not the big light. Ugh. But in terms of the spiritual journey, I need the big light. I need the big spiritual light. But the magpies, they're this type of bird, and they're a corvid. So they're like ravens and blue jays and crows. And if you live where I live in the world and you say, I love magpies, you get the exact same response as you do when you say, I love alcoholics. And what you get is, oh, do you know what they do? Followed by a personal story about how one has personally victimized them. And the truth is I do. And you see these magpies, they kind of look like they're wearing a tuxedo. They look like they're in black and white. And this feather in this light looks completely black. So in the shadow, in the shade, in the darkness, it looks black. It looks like there's nothing to it, just like an alcoholic. Ooh, maybe the light will work. I'm going to turn on the big light. We'll see if this will work. But these feathers have this beautiful iridescent pattern to them. Like there's an iridescence to them. And hold on, let me turn it on. And if it'll work, you can see it. So when the light hits it, it is a beautiful blue. It is a beautiful green. And it's completely different. But it was there the whole time. Big light off, big light off. Too much with the big light. I don't have any neurodivergent issues. It's fine. I don't have sensory problems. But that iridescence is just like us. You see, when I get into that light, that which was there the whole time gets revealed. But I've got to get into the light. And how do I get into the light? See, I couldn't just stay right here. I had to move, and I had to change my orientation to the light. So at this moment, when he talks about he stood at the sunlight at last, he's having an experience at step 2. And this is what I need. I need to get to that light. I need to have an experience. Now we're going to see that I can't stay well on one experience. And this next paragraph. Oh, and the takeaway, sorry, is at the core of who you are. The core of your being is good, is worthy, is valuable, is that beautiful iridescence. And I know if you're new, if you're struggling, if you haven't done this work, or you've been stalled out in this work and you're just like me, you're thinking, nah, girl, you're out of your mind. You're the Cockwomble. No, you are out of your mind. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But I promise that's true. And the more that I lean into this work, the more that I lean into these 12 steps, the more I experience this light. And so this next paragraph is Bill Wilson's second step. The second step doesn't exist yet, but this is where he gets his second step. It says it was only a matter of being willing to believe in a capital P power greater than myself. Nothing more was required of me to make my beginning. The second step is not a finish line. See, I got here and I thought I was supposed to have a spiritual awakening on step 2. I thought I was supposed to be walking hand in hand on the beach with God. I'm in Alberta. It's a landlocked province. We don't got beaches. I can't walk hand in hand on the beach with God. That's not possible. It is not the finish line. It is the starting blocks of a lifelong race. So I don't need to understand, I don't need to comprehend, I don't need to figure out, and I don't need to have a spiritual experience with God at the second step. All I need to believe was that there is a capital P power that is greater than myself. And as we see step 2, and I keyed it up, okay? I'm going to share with you step 2. Step 2, as it's written on page 58, it says, came to believe that a capital P power greater than ourselves. Now this is step 2, part 1. The first part of step 2 is, can I believe that there is a power that is greater than myself? Could there be one? Again, I can't come to the rooms and ignore the miracle that is your recovery. I see the light that has happened in your eyes. Man, I see your iridescence. I see your joy. I see your hope. I see you. And I cannot deny that there is a miracle that has happened in your life. Could I believe that you have a power that is working for you? That's it. That's it. And then now we're going to talk about part 2. So it goes on to say, I saw that growth could start from that point. Step 2 is again the starting blocks where growth begins. I just need a place to start. And it says, upon a foundation of complete willingness. Oh man, we don't talk about that a lot. Man, willingness. A foundation of willingness, that I've got to be willing to grow and deepen this connection with this power, this connection that I do not have in step 2. And if you're here today and it's like, okay, but how do I grow that connection? That is the purpose of the 12 steps. The purpose of the 12 steps is to bring about that connection, to bring about that power, that awakening, that spiritual experience. That is what the 12 steps are for. So that's what I've got to do. And I want to point this out because we're going to talk about willingness a whole lot. But what willingness looks like and what willingness does not have to look like. Because I think a lot of times we think willingness looks like, oh boy, I can't wait. I just can't, I would love to. Oh, that sounds delightful. Let me write that inventory. Oh, make amends to my ex, that guy? Great. Sounds like a fantastic idea. Helping other alcoholics? Well, yes, they're so patient, kind, reasonable, and punctual. Prayer and meditation? Got no issues with those. That's not what willingness looks like. I mean, it can, and that's a beautiful ideal. But here's what willingness looks like. I'm absolutely terrified. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. I don't think it'll help me. I don't think it's going to work, but I do it anyways. That is what willingness looks like. So I saw that growth could start from that point. Upon a foundation of complete willingness, I might build what I saw in my friend. And that is going to be step 2, part 2. Would I have it? Of course I would. Bill Wilson has had his first step experience. He knows that he's got nothing that can keep him sober. And so he sees before him somebody who has the solution, who has a solution, the solution for us. And so step 2, part 2, is that this power could restore us to sanity. And the sanity that we are singularly talking about is that the obsession of the mind is removed. The obsession of the mind is the thought that I have when I am sober that tells me this time will be different. Nobody will ever know. I got to get it out of my system. I get a case of the suddenlies. I have a thought that is on me all day that tells me to take a drink. The thought that I'm going to kill myself anyway, so why don't I get drunk? The thought that I have when I am sober that takes me back again and again to the first drink. Can I believe that this power could remove that from me? And again, he sees that has happened to his friend Ebby Thatcher. That's all that is needed. That's it. That is his second step. It's just that simple. And if you're here today and you're like, oh yeah, it's that. Yeah, I can believe there's a power. I don't like it, or maybe I don't understand it, the word understand in the 1930s means to know through experience. So we could not possibly understand it in step 2 because we don't have experience. We build the experience through these 12 steps. And so if I'm here today and I'm like, okay, I can believe that there's a power. And I believe that maybe, just maybe, that power could relieve from me the thought that I have that takes me back again and again and again to the first drink. That's it. That's step 2. That's all I need to do. All those prejudices, all those resentments, all those old ideas, the religious trauma that we might have, we can lay them aside for now. But we're going to pick them back up, and we're not saying throw it out, just pretend it didn't happen. What we're going to do is when we get to step 4, we're going to move through those, and we're going to find freedom from it. Because sometimes I feel when it's like, oh, just don't worry about it, but I'm so obsessed with it, I can't. So I want you to know that we will not be ignoring that. We will be moving through it. And if I'm able to say yes to those two points, I got my second step. It's that simple. He goes on to say, thus I was convinced that God is concerned with us humans when we want him enough. It's this idea that we have to seek this power. The power that is already there. I've just got to clear away the stuff that is blocking me from it. That's what I've got to do. And there's a wonderful speaker, Sandy Beach, and he would speak about that there's this idea there that there are different levels of seeking. So if you are a parent to a child or married to one, you know that there is that level of seeking, which is, honey or mom, where's my socks? Now, we all know that the socks were laid out on their bed. And they're like, I can't find my socks. So there's that level of seeking, which is not a deep level of seeking. And then we know, like, if you're part of a family that celebrates Easter, you do the Easter bunny thing, we know that there's that level of seeking, which will have some excitement and enthusiasm and then get bored in about 30 minutes, you know. And then maybe there's the seeking of Halloween where you get a little older and you're going for a couple hours, seeking from house to house to house to house. But the level of seeking that we have to have is a daily, consistent seeking that is more than my socks, that is more than the candy, whether it be Easter or Halloween. It is a daily, consistent seeking. And so it says, at long last, I saw, I felt, I believed. Scales of pride and prejudice fell from my eyes. A new world came into view. And you see, the thing with Alcoholics Anonymous, there's another well-known speaker. His name is Chuck Chamberlain, Chuck C. And he wrote a book that was based off a series of talks that was called A New Pair of Glasses. And that describes what happens through the process of the 12 steps. The world, and it's the same thing that happens with the light. Everything changes, and yet nothing has changed. So I go into a dark room, and I turn on the light, and everything in that room has changed, and yet nothing has changed. How I see that room has changed. Similarly, if you have any sort of vision impairment which requires glasses or contacts, you know what it's like when you're going around the world's a little fuzzy, and then you get that new pair of glasses, or you put in your contacts, and the whole world has changed, but the world itself has not changed. How we see the world has changed, and that's the moment he's describing. It says, the real significance of my experience in the cathedral burst upon me. So he's referencing what happened on page 1. And on page 1, he was, and this is the third time in the totality of his story that he's talking about it. And what happened on page 1 is he visits Winchester Cathedral. And he's full of fear. And he's got fear of two things. They legitimately are doing some sightseeing, like down in Southampton. But he's off to war. And he's desperately and terribly afraid of two things. The first thing that he's afraid of is that he is going to die in this war, which is a completely reasonable and understandable fear. Now, the second thing that he is equally as terrified of is that people are going to think he's a coward. You see, he was in the artillery unit, and the artillery unit wasn't the front lines, and it was actually considered a safer place to be, and he was so afraid of what people would think of him. And I know that none of us can relate to feeling like that. And so what happens? Bill Wilson is wrapped up in the bondage itself in this beautiful cathedral. And he has this moment where he feels that presence and that peace that comes over him. And this moment where he feels like he's connected. The fears fall from him. And it was this powerful moment, this powerful experience. So much so that he's referencing it time and time again. Now, the takeaway is that experience, his own experience, was enough to believe that there could be a power greater than himself. And again, we can look in our lives. Those times where, have I ever had those experiences? Those experiences where I felt that connectedness to something greater than myself. You know, maybe it's the ocean at sunset. Or I live by the Rocky Mountains, and if you drive out to the Rockies, there's something, it's like the mountains just emerge in front of you. And you are humbled by the majesty and the greatness of the Rocky Mountains. Kind of the coolest mountains on earth. I'm a little biased, but they're pretty good. Or that moment where you hold a newborn in your arms and you can see the universe in their eyes. Or that moment when you've got to do something and you don't know how, and there's a calm and a peace and a strength that is not your own. Any moments like that. And we're going to talk about that as we get into the second step. And if I've had any moments like that, I cannot say that there is not a power. But as we know from our own experience, those moments in and of themselves have not been enough to keep me sober. You see, I can't stay sober on one experience. Just like when I was drinking, I could not stay well on one drink. I've got to deepen and seek more and more this experience. And so it says, the real significance of my experience in the cathedral burst upon me. For a brief moment, I had needed and wanted God. There had been a humble willingness to have him with me, and he came. But soon, the sense of his presence had been blotted out by worldly clamors, mostly those within myself. And so what we're talking about here is Bill Wilson had this moment, this experience of this power at his second step. And it's okay if you don't have that at your second step. But he explained why. That this is not just believe in God sort of program. Belief in a power is not enough to keep me sober. Because what is standing between me and that power is those worldly clamors. And you know what's rude is that they're mostly within myself. Now the clamors, Rob put a dictionary definition of the clamors, because he's great about that. The outcries, commotions, louds, noises, like that's clamor. But what does that look like? I don't know about you, but I put down the bottle and there's a screaming that happens. You know, a screaming that comes from the depth of my soul. And maybe, and I kind of hope you guys don't relate to that. If you do, we got a solution. But if you don't relate to that, you might relate to the thoughts that are going around again and again and again. Those negative, repetitive thoughts that I can't seem to get freedom from. Those. And I'm wrapped up in the bondage of self. The clamors are my selfishness, my self-centeredness, my resentments. I'm thinking about me and the pain that I've gone through and how they treated me, and it's not fair. And the fears that I have about the future and how I think I need things to go, and the guilt that I have and the shame that I have, and it is loud and all over the place. And the sole purpose of the 12 steps is to clear away all of that so that there is nothing standing between me and that power. And again, that is a why. I can't stay well on one spiritual experience because I am a human being, which is rude. It is rude because I don't want to have to experience this whole human experience. It's a little much. It's a little overwhelming for this little alcoholic. But being human means that I will have fears. I will have resentments. I will fall into selfishness. I will fall into self-centeredness. I will be driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity. I will step on the toes of my fellows. I will make mistakes. And if I don't deal with them as they build up, one by one, those little things will build up and build up and build up and build up, and I will be blocked from that sunlight of the Spirit. And if I am blocked from that sunlight of the Spirit, I am in the darkness. And when I'm in the darkness, it is not a matter of if I drink again, but when. That is step one. And so I need to clear away the stuff inside of me that's blocking me from this power. And then what I need to do is I need to continue to keep that channel clean. And that is what the 12 steps are. That's what Alcoholics Anonymous is. That's what we're here to do. And that is so simple. That is so simple. Because I know I'm the only one. I have a tendency to overcomplicate things. I know, just me. But if you're here and you're struggling with the overcomplication, that's all I got to do. And it's like just the 12 steps is a way of life, like my life depends on it because it does. Yeah, no big, just a radical change in how I live already. So it says, at the hospital, I was separated from alcohol for the last time. This is December 11th of 1934. And where he's going is he's going back to the town's hospital. In Bill's story, this is the third time. But in his story, he kind of smushed together 2 hospitalizations. So it's really his fourth hospitalization. And he's going to the town's hospital. And I feel great because I've been running like late all morning. Brian knows he gave me the words of the day and I didn't respond to him until like the meeting started. I'm like, I got him. And then somebody else gave me 2 extra words of the day, which is so much fun. When it's a day when I am running late. But if you're interested in, so I just feel clever that I grabbed the book ahead of time. If you're interested in learning more about the town's hospital and the history of it, there's this beautiful book called King Charles of New York City. It's by Gary N. and it's wonderful, and it really, like, this is a big book. We got some history, and there's some little, anywho, focus. I was gonna, what little attention span that I have. All right. So December 11th, 1934, that's when Bill Wilson goes to the town's hospital. It says to detox for the final time. Treatment seemed wise, for I showed signs of delirium tremens. Now, when it talks about how what had happened is Bill Wilson had this powerful, he's sitting with his old drinking buddy, Ebby Thatcher. And he has this moment where it's like, yes, I need and I want God. But he continues to drink. He can't stay sober. This happened in late November. He can't stay sober. They go to I believe it's the Cavalry Mission, Sam Shoemaker's church, to do like some Oxford group type stuff and like hang out. And apparently Bill did this thing. So if you've ever done it and you're embarrassed about it, Bill did it, where he was hammered and he's like, I will share, which I never did. I didn't even want to share when I was sober. But Bill, and apparently he didn't do too bad, but I don't know, Ebby Thatcher was probably like, no, you were fine, Bill. It was like trying to give him coffee to sober him up. See, again, we can't stay sober on this one experience. And he needed to get separated. So he goes to the detox, essentially Towns Hospital in New York City. And when he says treatment seemed wise, you know what's interesting? That was not the consensus. Bill Wilson says treatment seemed wise. Lois was pissed. Lois, his wife, was like, Bill, are you kidding me? Why the heck did you go to the hospital? We can't afford this. And she had gotten the message from Dr. Silkworth that Bill Wilson was hopeless. She's like, you're just going to come out and drink again. This is a waste of money we don't have. And so Bill Wilson did, and I know we got some New Yorkers. I didn't have to say it like that, but I said it like that. I've been explicitly told not to call New Yorkers apple teenies, but I can't not. Because the big apple, the apple teeny. I know. I'm the worst. We'll write inventory on me. I'm walking here. I'm not actually. I don't walk without assistance or very often. Anyway, focus. Gosh, you can tell we're like, my brain's like, okay, I got about 5 minutes left, and all my attention span just left. But Bill Wilson, he gets 2 bottles and he goes on the subway. He's like drinking on the subway, double fist in it. He shows up to the town's hospital. He's like, Silky, I've got it. And Dr. Silkworth is like, oh dear, you certainly have it, Bill. Because Bill is all excited. He's like, I got the solution. I got the answer. And it's like, oh boy, yeah, you do. So Bill was the only one that thought treatment seemed wise. And so December 11th, 1934, that's when he gets separated. That's when he puts himself in the town's hospital. It says, there I humbly offered myself to God as I then understood him, to do with me as he would. I placed myself unreservedly under his care and direction. I admitted for the first time that of myself I was nothing, that without him I was lost. And right there we can make a note that that is Bill Wilson's 3rd step. He is making a decision that he is going to do whatever God would have him do. And if you're like, what? It's essentially for us a decision to work these 12 steps as a way of life, like his life depends on it, because it does. Now, some of y'all know I love me my sneakies. I love me my sneaky prayers. I love my sneaky promises. I love my sneaky descriptions of a spiritual awakening. Sneaky, sneaky. And if you're here today and you're looking for another way to use or another way to say a 3rd step prayer, like a different 3rd step prayer, right here we can use this one. God, I humbly offer myself to you as I understand you, to do with me as you would. I place myself unreservedly under your care and direction. I admit that of myself I am nothing, that without you I am lost. And I say that on a daily basis. God, I offer myself to you, to do with me as you would. I place myself unreservedly under your care and direction. I admit that of myself I am nothing, that without you I am lost. So that's a prayer, and we get to use it. And like, oh, we gotta spice it up. And it says, so that is his step 3, from there to lost. It says, I ruthlessly faced my sins. Now, if you hear the word sin and you have religious trauma, your hackles might go up and be like, ugh, and that is okay. But when we think about the word sin, we can just reframe it. And we can use the word defect of character, shortcoming. And also, the word sin also comes from archery. It's an archery term. And the word sin means to miss the mark. So we face our mistakes, our defects, or shortcomings, whatever word you want to use. And he ruthlessly faced them. He was searching and fearless. And it says, and became willing to have my newfound capital F friend take them away root and branch. Now that capital F friend is not Ebby Thatcher. A human power cannot relieve me of my defects of character. That capital F friend is God. Higher power, creator, spirit of the universe. That's what we're talking about. And so what we're seeing in this moment is a step 4 and a step 6 and 7. He's having a look at the things inside of him that are blocking him, and he can see them, and he's willing for this power to take them away. And I love that it says root and branch. And on the very top of page 12, he was describing his friend, Ebby Thatcher. His roots were on new soil. They grasped at a new depth. And these defects of character, he's willing for them to be taken root and branch. And that is them in their totality, all of them. Now, I'm not really a gardener, but some of you guys know what it's like to garden. And you got weeds and like dandelions, which I think weeds are just like an opinion. We're like, it's a weed because I don't like it. Like I think like invasive species is like a botanal... I don't know, like in botany, like classification. I don't think weed's a thing. It might be a thing. If you know more about plants, which I assure you do, you can. I don't stand much, but I do stand to be corrected. But if you try to like get all the dandelions off your yard, and you just pluck them at the top, we know it just grows right back. I've got to pull it from the depth of its root. That's what I've got to do. So there is nothing left, and I'm willing for this power, the cosmic gardener, to take it away, all of it in its totality. That's the 7th step. He says, I have not had a drink since. My schoolmate, that's our boy Ebby Thatcher, Throckmorton, visited me, and I fully acquainted him with my problems and deficiencies. That would be his 5th step. So some of it is a little out of our regular order. We would do 4, 5, 6, 7, and he does 4, 6, 7, 5. But we see the genesis, the idea of these 12 steps. We made a list of people I had hurt or toward whom I felt resentment. And then he goes on to say, I express my entire willingness to approach these individuals admitting my wrong. That willingness and that list, that is step 8. That's step 8. And he says, never was I to be critical of them. I was to write all such matters to the utmost of my ability. And when he would go out and make those amends, that is his step 9. His step 9. Now, I'll spoil it for you. This next page is dedicated to the 11th step. Paragraph. This next paragraph is dedicated to the 11th step. So it says, I was to test my thinking by the new God consciousness within. The word consciousness means with knowing. So he started without this knowing, without this idea, without a real conception, that understanding. And now he's beginning to develop and grow that understanding. And how he does that is through these 12 steps as a way of life. The with knowing is coming to him as he does this work. Common sense would thus become uncommon sense. You know, the normal habituated ways of doing things. I'll give you a couple examples, like avoiding a problem and hoping it goes away. Just lying, because that's easier. That is our common sense when we get here. Uncommon sense is like dealing with it head on, communicating. Wild concepts, like completely foreign to me. So, yeah, saying no when I want to say no, when I need to say no, being like, no, thank you. Crazy. Like, I'm not kidding. I need the power that animates the universe to come into my life to be like, you can say no. That's what I need. All right. And I know I'm pushing it, Peppa. I'm pushing it. Thank you for your patience with me. Yeah, she's good. All right. I was to sit quietly when in doubt. And that sitting quietly is a meditative practice. So right there, we're talking about meditation. And then it goes on to say asking. Anytime in this book it says ask or to ask or we ask, that is a prayer. So asking only for direction and strength to meet my problems as he would have me. And again, I can pick this up and I can use this as a prayer. God, higher power, creator, spirit of the universe. I ask for direction and strength to meet my problems as you would have me. We got 2 sneaky prayers on one page. It's a 2-for-1 special. Woo! You don't have to be as excited about it as I am. All right. It says, never was I to pray for myself, except as my request bore on my usefulness to others. So it's not a get me a pony. But it is, God, help me to be courageous, to do my 4th step. Help me to be kind, patient, loving, honest, humble, kind. That is the prayers that I'm asking for. Help me to show up and be of use to the people at the meeting. Help me to show up and be of use to my family. Help me to show up and be of use to my sponsees. Those prayers. Not, get me a pony, because I would like one. There's a like TikTok trend that's like with a soundbite that's like, and I woke up in a new Bugatti. I'm not praying for a Bugatti. No, I'm praying to be of use, even if I'm driving a jalopy. Oh, that rhymes. Okay, 1 minute. I really got to wrap up. All right. But when I do that, when I pray for how I can be of helpful to others, then only might I expect to receive. But that would be in great measure. When I pray in that way, I receive more than I could have imagined. And that's it for me. Thank you so much.